Hey Seals fans, what's going on? I'm Teddy Jenner, and this is a very impromptu chat between myself, Steve Govett, and Patrick Merrill, and I'm so glad that you could join us all. Obviously, the news of the week hasn't been one that we all hoped we would get, but kind of one that we saw coming. The National Lacrosse League announcing that they would forego any sort of shortened bubble hybrid season and focus on a full game season of full length starting in the fall of 2021. Steve, this is news that, like I said, we weren't really hoping for, but kind of expected. But there is some other news that we need to get to first, and that's why the heck am I here?
Why the heck is Teddy here? Hey, Teddy, I guess before we get to the news of the week, we'll get to the news of the day. And thrilled to have Teddy Jenner join the Seals as part of our broadcast crew when we get back to broadcasts, and certainly helping us with social media content and on-air talent. Light on the talent, heavy on the on-air, but the premier and the foremost authority on lacrosse in the National Lacrosse League. Teddy Jenner joined the Seals. It's big news for us. Welcome aboard, Ted. Thrilled to have you.
I appreciate it, Steve. You've always been good to me whenever I've needed to find a new home. So real happy to be a part of the Seals and reunited with my former teammate in Patrick Merrill. And Patty, this has been a tough season as a head coach and general manager, but you're also still busy with the Hill Academy. How are things going up there north of the border?
Yeah, first of all, welcome to the team, Teddy. Couldn't be more excited to be working with you again. Huge asset to our organization, so welcome aboard. But and congratulations. But yeah, things are very much kind of like March or April vibes from the spring up here in Canada right now. Quite frankly, we're still technically in a state of emergency. As you know, I work at the Hill Academy as well up here, and we just got an announcement this past Wednesday, I guess it was, that they are going to allow students to come back to school. We're going to reopen on the 16th, but there's a lot to navigate through logistically to be ready for our staff and students to come back. But otherwise, pretty good.
The logistics of what you're dealing with, kind of comprehend what the logistics Steve and everyone else in the National Lacrosse League have been having to deal with for the past few months. Steve, this obviously was not an easy decision for Nick Sakevich, the Players Association, the Board of Governors. How did we get here?
Well, I think going back and just, a bit to recap the history, there was a ton of work put in by a ton of people and ideas and thought processes. And I think with the goal in mind of the long-term sustainability and growth of the National Lacrosse League. And I think if that's your starting point, I think everybody is moving in a positive direction, thinking about what we can do to grow our league and grow the platform. And quite frankly, you know what, we're just faced with a safety issue here, right? I mean, I think when it's all said and done, the National Lacrosse League, the players, the coaches, the GMs, and the owners and the league office are thinking about how do we protect our own and making sure that we're not putting people in harm's way. And a number of offices around the league are closed with people working from home so that we can protect each other. And I think that's indicative of us thinking about not putting fans in an arena, whether they're open or not. Trying to come up with solutions. So ultimately, this is about safety, and COVID has taken over the world and has consumed a lot of people, and that's tragic. And I think the National Lacrosse League across the board and all its stakeholders just weren't going to be a part of that.
Obviously, people are going to look at the optics and say, well, how come the San Diego Gulls can play? And how come the NHL can do things and the NBA and all these other pro leagues and the PLL can get things done? Why couldn't the National Lacrosse League get this done?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think starting with, the Gulls and understanding who the Gulls are and what the AHL is, and as a farm system for the parent clubs, their job is to keep players focused and ready on serving that parent club. And those guys are a minor league system that is preparing those players to move up to the next level and fill in where there's injuries or trades or whatever the case may be. And their ability, and the Gulls are moved up to play in a small, I wouldn't say it's a practice facility, but a small venue without fans in order to stay close to Anaheim and prepare their players to go up to the bigger clubs. And obviously the NHL is in a scenario where television contracts in both the NBA and the NHL have been so big, to the extent that they have to be able to continue to deliver on their contracts and the obligations they have for their contracts. And it's a challenge. I know a number of our owners in the National Lacrosse League are challenged. They have a national hockey team. Some of them have NBA teams, and they're challenged right now with not having people in the buildings. And you know what's really tough is the fans make our game. When you play in front of fans, like that's the heartbeat of this whole process, and playing in front of these people, and that's what we do. We entertain people, and it's a sportainment opportunity, and unfortunately, not having fans makes it's a little bland. The PLL is a much different animal, right? They play outdoors, and so the indoor nature of our sport made it really difficult to get people into the building. As a ticket revenue driven league. That was obviously going to be a challenge. The PLL playing outside and the obligations they have with NBC and their contract, they're going to move forward, we hope, and I hope they get a chance to play, and we're pulling for them and excited to watch. I watched the PLL Island like everybody else last summer and was riveted, and that was the impetus for thinking about a bubble for the NLL.
We're going to get to that bubble question in a minute. We want to bring Patrick back in. And how deep were you in your preparation for what could have been an NLL bubble?
Yeah, I would say pretty deep. So, even going back to just before the draft, all the considerations that kind of went into that, and who we select, and, with the kids that they're kids to me now, I guess, Teddy, right? We're getting older.
Yeah, we're getting old, bud.
The players going back to college, and so, but since then, we tried to prepare the players. We have a large group of guys that were signed, and between myself and our assistant coaches, Josh Sanderson and Billy Greer, and our scouting staff, we stayed pretty engaged with the guys the best that we could. We had monthly calls with them. We did film sessions with them. Obviously, we were monitoring their training programs, etc. With our strength and conditioning coaches in San Diego, working with them remotely. So when they got the news the other day, it was pretty emotional, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I think, just to Steve's point, I think everyone realized, just due to the nature of playing in the league and being a part of this league, that I think they appreciated the fact that we were looking out for their safety first.
You mentioned you got a bunch of guys signed. You have about 30 guys under contract right now. How do you like the looks of your team going into whenever we may start?
I think that was the most heartbreaking part of it, Teddy, to be honest. We were pretty excited about this group, and I think, as well, just from the guys, and especially the guys that have been around since year one, we were really kind of, I would say, building towards this year in a lot of ways, and then just looking at our roster, from our coaching staff to the players from our new players to the players that we've had around for a little while. There was a huge sense of excitement and confidence. I really didn't, right from the time that kind of the season was suspended and eventually canceled last spring, there's just a different sense of confidence within the group. And then it grew, once we got through free agency and added some players, and then the draft. And again, I think they put a lot of work into trying to prepare for whatever was going to be presented to them as a format this season. So, yeah, I think that stung a little bit for the group, but I think it also bodes well for next year.
Steve, you may be able to answer this because when Pat and I talked the other day, he was still unsure. Has the National Lacrosse League decided what they're going to do with this missed sort of year? Is it going to count towards contracts, or are we just going to pretend like March through whenever we start again never happened?
Yeah, well, I think the challenge that we have is that there was a ton of energy, resources, and thought being put into a shortened season, first of all. And as we transition from that to what we thought was going to be an opportunity to play, in the bubble, everything kind of focused on that. And so as this decision was made in real time, last week, earlier this week, we've already convened the competition committee. We have a great group on that committee that I get to lead, and a lot of conversation has already happened. Certainly Brian Lemon and Max Twir at the league office are huge parts of that. And the competition committee is going to convene. We've already had a conversation about, I think the first order of business was freezing the rosters right now and just kind of saying, okay, we're not going to add, subtract. We need to just have a cooling off, settle down. Okay, now what? And we will begin to convene. We convene weekly. I suspect we'll start to have conversations more than weekly to come up with solutions for obviously timing and the key dates, which are going to be interesting as we move forward, and what happens with the NCAA and the draft and draft order and free agency. And there's a number of things that remain to be negotiated, and ongoing conversations continue to happen between the PLPA and the league office. And we're hopeful for super positive outcomes there. And ultimately that's going to dictate the direction that we take. So clearly lots of thought going into one, shifting and pivoting. We are focusing attention on what's next. And that's just the bottom line is we're facing kind of shifting sands, if you will, and people keep moving the goalpost on us. COVID keeps moving the goalpost on us, and ultimately where we thought we would be, from a health and safety perspective at this time, in last, even October, right? Even August or even September in the draft, when you think back to where we thought we would be right now, and all the planning that has gone into making that work. I got to tell you, it's been fantastic, because I think what this is exposing is a lot of character in our league office, a lot of character at the teams, and I think perseverance and a focus on how to grow this league for the long term. So really good news, right? It's tough news to hear, but I think good news is we're getting better and stronger in this situation. And so what will come out of it is obviously some announcements that'll be about key dates and contracts and drafts, and all that stuff is coming.
We talked the bubble, and everyone was kind of hoping that we would get to that state. And there were some rumors floating around that, Hamilton was going to be in the mix, and we were going to have a 20-day tournament, and we were going to crown a champion. Did you think that was actually viable as you guys were discussing that? Was that close to being really put into action?
Yes. And right now feel like it's viable. It would have been viable for the National Lacrosse League. Now, obviously, circumstances making it difficult to pull that off, and safety, obviously, right? So, but from a viability perspective, I think it was going to be a really intriguing and compelling narrative for the National Lacrosse League. Would it have been shorter? Would it have been different? Would it potentially, and Pat can talk about this, but potentially a war of attrition in that time frame? And I just think our product is so good, and our players are so amazing, and the guys that are leading them, like Patrick and coaches and GMs around the league, it would have been so awesome and really like destination television. And if you remember back on PLL Island in the summer, everybody was tuning in to watch what was happening today, and then ultimately was really intrigued by what would happen tomorrow, and the constant engagement that we would have had. I can't say enough about how cool that the product, but the product that was going to be created for this in a made for TV event, and the efforts and energy and the money that was going to be spent, I got to tell you, it was going to be a spectacular the National Lacrosse League has never seen. So a spectacle that I think we would have been super proud of. And I'm bummed. I'm heartbroken that we're not going to get to pull it off, because I would have loved to have seen all of our teams in one place at one time playing a tournament. It would have been just special.
It would have been like, days when we were kids going to the jamborees, traveling around and seeing
Pee-wee
your buddies.
Nationals.
And yeah, exactly. You talked about the television and the spectacular and the things that were being planned. And the commissioner mentioned these things to Devin Caney in his sort of press conference that he did the other day. Are these practices of looking for TV ventures something that we're going to be looking forward to in the future? Is this like going to be a proceeded event?
I sure hope so. I mean, I think that the point of kind of all of this is to drive viewership and increase consumership, right? And so this is really about long-term and what we can do to build long-term value in our franchises, long-term value in our players, and long-term value in the overall, construct of the league. And that only comes when you build more consumers. And we have to build non-endemic consumers. There are unfortunately just not enough lacrosse fans out there. We have to introduce the game across the board and grow the footprint. And I think what we saw throughout the board was people from every team and the league that are committed to seeing the consumer base grow and a passion for our product, and then delivering that product to a lot of people, to the masses. I think that's what we're going to continue to pursue. We have to.
The masses include two rookies that you drafted, Pat, in Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Leclerc. How excited are you to, not have to wait for them now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, we were always kind of hoping that, if the bubble or the season would have started in April, that we would still kind of be able to inject them into our lineup then. But we knew that it would be somewhat of a challenge or even a long shot. Again, they are two guys that hopefully will be with us for a long time. But in the short term, kind of we feel could address some kind of immediate needs as well. We think that they're that mature as players and that NLL ready and that dynamic. It was actually really cool to kind of get to know them through this process as well. We kind of try to obviously lightly working around, what they were doing, but I was able to, have conversations with them individually and stuff, and their excitement to play in this league. Obviously their main priority right now is school, but their excitement to play in this league and get involved with the team dynamic already was pretty cool for us as coaches to get to know them through that process, because again, I think that their guys are committed to being pro players and are going to have long careers themselves.
I got to watch Danny Logan with Denver University play on Friday. That was a good treat to watch. He's going to be a real spark plug for you guys. It's going to be interesting because Steve talked about the draft and when that might be and how it might be affected. You're now essentially could be getting two full draft classes into a roster of 30 already proven NLL guys. How difficult is that going to be as a general manager and as a coach to work around the really excessive number of bodies that you're going to have that you've never really had before?
Good problem to have as a GM, that's for sure. And again, the 2020 draft was really strong, really deep in terms of talent. I think the 2021 draft is going to be the same. And it's going to be tricky, but at the end of the day, as Steve mentioned, I have trust in the leadership of the competition committee, of the league in general, and I'm sure we're going to figure it out in a fair and equitable way. There's already some posturing going on, rumors flying around between GMs and on the street within the lacrosse world. I'm sure you're hearing them as well, Teddy. Get people trying to get edges here and there already. But at the end of the day, there's so many cool things that can happen right out of that draft. And, the more talent we can add to our roster, we're going to take it. And we also have, some players that unfortunately that are approaching the end of their careers as well. And we realize that. And, may not return as a result of this. So we're going to need to acquire some talent to help us get to where we want to go next year and in the future.
You probably have the inside track. Are we going to get Brody back, and are we going all in for him, or are we going to try to get your little brother a ring here?
You know what? I don't know. To be honest, I think that, Brody's in a pretty good place. I think, as he always says, he feels in kind of a Brody way, right? He feels worse for the guys that kind of are in their prime, and he kind of considers himself on borrowed time at this point. But, he feels worse for the guys and quite frankly, the college kids and the young players that are missing seasons right now. He said he doesn't want anyone to shed a tear for him. That being said, we're going to certainly try to convince him to play again. That's where we're at, and we hope he can get there. But obviously, it's going to take him some time now to digest this news and see where he's at going into next year. But either way, I think he's at peace with where he's at, and but I think he takes a look at our roster as well, right? And he mentioned to me the other day and said, this is probably the team that he feels most confident in terms of winning a championship with, and maybe more so than any other team he's played on. So that's something, right? So hopefully that motivates him to come back.
Maybe being on Twitch or Nickelodeon might intrigue him and entice him to come back. Steve, what kind of endeavors is the league looking into to try to bring more eyes from not just a streaming platform basis?
Yeah, I think it's about mass distribution, right, Ted? I think the key to this is how can we get to the most amount of people, in the shortest possible pathway. But the key is who we're introducing the game to, right? And what demographic. And I think who is the new level of consumer and what is it that people are consuming on? So, the NFL broadcast on Nickelodeon, while some traditionalists, some people that already consume are not the people we need to convince, right? Because that's simple. They already consume, and so they love it already. And while their opinions are important to us and we'll continue to listen, we need to broaden the horizons. And what the NFL did was they took a risk, and NFL doesn't need to take any risks. But that's an example. They're certainly a benchmark legacy league, and they're taking chances on networks like Nickelodeon with a broadcast geared towards kids. And I heard from a lot of parents that turned around and said their kid loved it and watched it and can't wait for the next one. And then the following week they watched a game and were like, "Hey, where's the slime?" And I think that's what the National Lacrosse League needs to consider. And look, many conversations can't obviously get too in depth with what's happening behind the scenes, but new platforms to launch the sport, and traditional platforms are important, right? Linear television still is important, but as you watch people cut cords, as you watch people kind of consume in different ways on these devices that they have, we need to be really cognizant of what the future looks like, and that's what I really was excited about for the bubble, was that we were actually talking about much different approach than we have talked about in the past, and I think that's refreshing. I think all of our ownership thought it was refreshing and exciting, and that's going to bode well for our future.
When the news came out, there was kind of two schools of thought. There was fans that understood, and there was players that understood, and sponsors that'll understand. But there's also obviously the ones that just don't understand and see this as a lost opportunity for the National Lacrosse League. And one concern that will always come up whenever something like this happens, especially with our league, is the fear of teams folding. Are we in that position right now?
I don't think the National Lacrosse League has ever been stronger. And I have been, not to bore anybody with ancient history, but I've been around for a heck of a long time, and I have watched the ebbs and flows of this league, and I've seen teams go away, and I've understood every reason behind it. It's just, it is what it is. But I don't think I have ever seen a board so galvanized towards the future of what we're doing and the building of equity and this, the expansion and the new owners that come to our table at the Board of Governors and their excitement that they have and evidenced in a guy like Greg Bibb and Bill Cameron in Fort Worth and just the sheer passion that they're bringing to the table that have never been involved in the game before. And so it excites me, it energizes me, it ignites, kind of that passion and the fire that I think we want to have. And so, you know what, those fans that are saying, hey, we lost an opportunity. Yeah, sure, we did. And it's a challenge. We're all reeling from this right now and a little bit in mourning. But the bottom line is, and I go back to my first statement, this is about safety, and we cannot, who would we be, right? Who would we be as leaders and stakeholders in this game if we weren't looking out for our employees and our players and those fans that come into the arena and sometimes, tough love, right? You got to do what's right.
The Canadian border issue was obviously one that was going to be a huge hurdle for us. Do we hope that when we get to 10 months from now that we're going to be able to do a full league, or is it a Canadian-U.S. division kind of process, do you think?
Well, as I said, shifting sands and moving goalposts, right? I think today we're all optimistic that, a later fall start, and we normally, in recent years have started kind of early December. I think targeting that time frame or sometime before or after that, depending on kind of the circumstances. Look, I hope that we're getting to 80% of vaccinations and that we get to the herd immunity process and that we are kind of moving through that to the extent that people feel comfortable coming back into buildings and player crossing the border and that the border will open again. I mean, it's the longest contiguous border of allies, that's been open for years, right? And I think we need to get back to the friendship between, the Americans and the U.S. and a mutual respect for each other's activity with regards to safety. And my hope is that recent events might put us back on a plane where we're going to protect each other. So that's the only way this is going to happen, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think ultimately, by taking care of each other, we're going to get to a point where we can put people in a building. But I got to tell you, I think vaccines are going to be a scenario where you're going to have a vaccine passport that says you got it in order to come into a building. And I think things are coming that are going to change. You want to go to a concert, you want to go to events, you want to go to a ball game, whatever. I think you're going to have to show credentials that you're safe. And so strange things are coming. I'm merely speculating here. I don't know anything. I'm just kind of speculating. But that's my hope, is that we're all taking care of each other.
We talked about the bubble possibility. I think a lot of fans were hoping that maybe a Canadian division, American division might happen. With the amount of players on either side of the border, was that kind of reaching to be able to do that?
Yeah, completely reaching. I mean, ask Patrick. I mean, Pat, how many players from Canada do we have? How many of those guys could have played in a scenario where the American teams were just playing against American teams? It's not realistic.
Yeah,
it would have been very difficult and challenging in a lot of ways.
Pat, we're 10 months away from what we hope will be the NLL's 35th season. What's the plan for you and your staff now?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's circling back to kind of what, first of all, just, waiting for information from the league, right? Which I know is forthcoming and continuing to have conversations. I mean, we did a lot of modeling throughout this process too, in terms of roster, right? We were trying to prepare ourselves for all different types of situations, and Steve was great to kind of poke me to try and say, okay, well, maybe there might be an all American division, or there might be a bubble, et cetera, right? You might have a limited roster or a limited schedule, et cetera. So we did look at all those different types of scenarios. And so obviously, as we wait for information from the league, then we're going to kind of circle back to the scenario that we're going to kind of hone in on. And then, in the meantime, have individual conversations with guys, right? In terms of, I know it's a very committed group, and it's a group that wants to stay together, but inevitably in every off season, things change, as you know, Teddy, right? So, that's just the way it is. So we got to prepare for that too, right? And there could be, free agents available that we have our eye on that are currently on other teams that we think could make us better, right? It could be a completely different pool of free agents that we're looking at. We have an expansion draft to prepare for, right? And all those things. So I think, but in the short term, again, awaiting the information from the league, and then circling back with each individual guy to say, okay, where are you at, right? And where do you want to go, and where does your commitment lie for next year?
Well, one of the things, you make lemonade out of lemons, right? And it's been a tough time. And Pat and I have been, we throw hypotheticals at the wall all day long. And I go, well, what happens? What if we do this? And what if we do this? And what about this? And Pat just, I hear him groaning on the other end of the phone, and he's like, goes back with plan A, B, C, and G. And we keep going back down the road of, okay, well, what if we did this? But when you talk about lemonade out of lemons, we're very committed to guys like Frankie Chiliano and Nick DeMood as goaltenders, but we're able to sign a young kid who came out of the CCBLL and Moose Winery to be able to, be a third goalie for us that could live in the market, and has moved to San Diego and has been amazingly helpful with the junior SEALs. And he takes shots with the guys, and he's got the gear on. And here's a guy that wants to develop into a goaltender long term. He's 22 years old, and just is thrilled to be a part of it, and is living in the market with a bunch of the other guys that are still here, that have been here kind of from the beginning, with Cam Holding and Wes Berg and Austin Stotts and those guys. And here this kid's going to develop into a goaltending who's seeing a ton of rubber, right? So lemonades out of lemons.
Yeah, there has been a great point. I think there's been a huge silver lining in all this, from my perspective, because you have time to kind of obviously look yourself in the mirror, look within yourself, but and try to improve, but it also you have more time to kind of find projects like Moose, or and again, through the longer off season, we had a lot more interest, quite frankly, from American free agents, that have a lot of potential, and that were, and again, it forces you to look for players in different places, and work with players in different ways, right? And work with your coaching staff in different ways as well. We challenged each other quite a bit through this process to kind of look at ways, let's not just look at the way things kind of have always been done, right? And let's look at kind of new ways that we can either improve our roster or improve the way we play.
Same thing goes for the business, right, Pat? Patty, we're sitting back going, okay, relaunch Seals 2.0 is kind of the internal, rallying cry for us, is looking at the time we've had away and focusing. Look, we've got a lot of work to do to relaunch the Seals in this marketplace, to the extent that, we're not happy with a half full building, right? We want a full building. And so we better get on the process of building that database and building the consumer base, and doing all the things that Patrick's doing on the team side, right, is happening on the business side. And you're a big part of that right now, Ted, and building content that people are engaged in. And one of the things I've been thrilled about in San Diego is the coverage of the media in this market has been very respectful to us, and understanding the fan base that we have, and the season ticket holders, season ticket members that we have been spectacular. The sponsors have been, so understanding and so, spectacular in this process. And the building and the arena has been great. And I think throughout this whole thing, we're only going to get better and more entrenched in the market.
Well, you know what, and it's a good point. Sorry to interject there, Teddy, but you're going to realize this pretty quickly. The team that you're working with in San Diego is, I will say, I have the chance and the opportunity to sit on a department head call every Tuesday afternoon or evening, my time, and interact with, all the different great leaders that we have within the organization and all the different departments. And for me, walking away from those calls, it was like, holy geez, I'm going to look at coaching a little bit differently, right? I'm going to look at based on what I learned from Colby or from Luke or Josh, right? in our front office in terms of the way they're doing things and the innovative things that they're working on to help the organization get to the next level. And then I bring those ideas back to the players, right? And we have great conversations, within the group to apply different ideas and same with the coaching staff, et cetera. So yeah, I think that has been certainly a silver lining. And I love the idea of, using this time to kind of, as a league, as an organization, as a sport, to come back stronger, right? Because let's be honest, there were some things, as you know, Teddy, that we've been dealing with over the years that we just haven't had time to get to as a sport, right, that are really important, that we have the time and resources to change at this point or build upon, right? I mean, obviously not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of great things that are going on. Our sport is amazing, but we need to find, to Steve's point, find a way to get it to more people. And there's some things that have kind of plagued us in the past that we can address now.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a fantastic conversation. Obviously, like I said at the start, not one we were hoping to have, but one that needed to be had. And we can look forward to 10 months of Seals 2.0. I'm sure, Steve, you have a ton of recipes in your cookbook that you need to go through. But we look forward to tasting that. Wondering if you're going to have, Chef Gordon Ramsay or anybody famous on one of your shows.
I retired. I was such a jerk to my family when I was trying. Now I know why chefs are jerks. It's not easy. I mean, I'm not, I'm by no means a chef, but when you start to get mean to your family because, you cooked something and it wasn't right on the first take, and now you can't cook it again, right? That was what I was getting so frustrated with everything, and so ultimately I said, you know what, that was fun for a while. I'm not going to do it anymore, but. And then the TFL podcast, which I just had such a blast doing, but looks like Jake Elliott stole my idea. So he stole my idea, so he's doing it now without me. I don't even get royalties. But at the end of the day, Teddy, I'm glad you're with us. We're excited to have you. Seals 2.0, I think everybody should look forward to. I'm super excited that we're a contender that's ready to play lacrosse today, tomorrow, or whenever they tell us to show up. I think Patrick's group is fired up, and I think we're a contender to win a championship. So, just tell us when and tell us where.
Well, we can build off that game against Rochester that sort of ended the season and go from there. Gentlemen, again, fantastic catching up. This will be the first of many conversations we have over the next few months. Stay safe, and let's get ready to dive in.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, buddy. Our fans are going to love you.